This meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of January 22nd, 2025 will come to order. Roll call, please.
Chairman Richardson.
Here.
Vice Chairman Aton.
Here.
Secretary Grant.
Here.
Member Childs.
Here.
Member Garrod.
Here.
Member Faison.
Here.
Alternate Member Findler.
Here.
Alternate Member Rogers.
Here.
School Board Member McLaughlin.
We do have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I said, we do have a quorum. Next is approval of the minutes of the January 8, 2025 meeting. Y'all have been given a copy.
Move to approve as presented.
Vice Chairman Aton.
Second.
Moves to approve. Seconded by Secretary Grant. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are passed. Chelsea, would you give the quasi-judicial confirmation procedures, please?
Yes, sir. Tonight's agenda states, all persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to the procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is petitions and requests from the public present. Anyone have a petition or request? Doesn't require a card. Anyone want to speak? One more time. Okay, the next item is old business. We don't have any. The conditional use permit, is that old business, Eddie?
That is new business.
Okay. That would be 8C, conditional use permit.
Thank you, Chair. The request is for a conditional use permit at CUP number 4-2024 at 800 Century Medical Drive. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow a pain management clinic. The property is 0.88 acres in size and is currently zoned hospital medical. A CUP is required to establish a pain management clinic in the hospital medical zoning district. The request is for an interventional pain management clinic consisting of 7 exam rooms, a procedure room, and a waiting room. There will be no on-site controlled substances. The interventional pain management clinic will not dispense any controlled substances. The proposed pain management clinic has been approved for registration with the Florida Department of Health, registration number PMC 1890. Staff recommends approval of CUP number 4-2024 to allow the pain management clinic use with the following conditions: for a 6-foot-high fence to be placed along the rear property line.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the staff? Member Childs.
I was going to say, why is there a conditional use permit required for this use? I know I was working for a pain medicine doctor back in 2011 when they passed the law about, when Florida passed the pill mill law to stop like pill mills. So I was thinking, is this like a harken back to, we didn't want pill mills just anywhere, you think? Okay.
Yeah.
So now that's kind of changed. Well, they've done a
But
few
the code
laws
has
for that,
not,
but
yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Member Rogers.
I was just going to say, I've learned recently that a retention pond is a recreational facility. I just wonder if it's too close to a recreational facility.
The staff review is that it met the requirements for the distancing.
Okay. Any other questions? Serious questions? Okay, we'll start the public hearing. The applicant is a representative of the applicant. Yes, come on up. You just turned it off.
Just speak, or are there questions first? My name is Nick Giordano. I'm the pain management doctor who owns and runs Central Florida Spine and Pain. I'm the only physician there. We're an interventional pain management practice. We specialize in really highly interventional procedures, minimally invasive things that can help treat a variety of different pain. We think of our practice as really a primary care service for people with injuries, anybody with any musculoskeletal problem, primarily back pain, neck pain is what we specialize. I have training in different minimally invasive procedures. Like I said, we do a variety of things like epidural injections. We treat joint pain of the spine, the knees, the shoulders. Our goal is really just to make people's lives better in any way that we can. And that's really what we focus on. Anyone who comes to us, before we start this process of the interventional stuff, most people are required to have over 6 weeks of physical therapy. We work them up with imaging and we figure out the thing that's best for them. If we can't help, we always get people in the direction that they can get help even better. Sometimes it's just physical therapy. Other times it's more than us, like surgery. But we're pretty much the first stop people take when physical therapy fails to figure out kind of like, hey, what's going on? And then that's when we kind of do our thing. And our goal is to bring the interventional suite up here so that our patients don't have to travel anymore.
Secretary Grant.
Do you have any objections to the condition that Eddie was talking about the 6-foot fence?
No objection.
Member Charles.
Do a lot of joint injections? Is that what you mostly do? Or
Yeah.
is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we have ultrasound guided joint injections. Most of them are steroids. We do ablations for like nerves that innervate the joints. There's a bunch of different like tricks we have to kind of make the joint pain, shoulder pain, neck, but really anything is what we specialize when it comes down to that. A lot of it is kind of like really figuring out what it is and really treating that joint or nerve issue that is occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
This is an actual question. You say, or the material says that you will not be dispensing any pain medication from the office, and you will not. It sort of seemed to say there would not be any on site.
Yeah, we don't keep any on site at all.
I assume that a bit has to sort of come to the site to be used. They're on a. Do you just kind of order them?
Anything that would be so if we do have to prescribe medications, because it does happen, there's a bunch of different things that we have to do. One is it has to be electronically prescribed to a pharmacy. We have to run PDMPs and check like the government website every visit to make sure they didn't fill it anywhere else.
PMPs?
It's like there's a government website that we have to log into basically, and it has a list of any controlled substance any one of us would have gotten prescribed, whether it's like Valium for anxiety, a pain medicine, Adderall, things like that. Everything is listed. So every visit we have to log into this website. It shows that we log in and we can see when a patient filled it, when they're due, and what they're taking based on that. It has the overdose risk score, it has everything right there. So that's part of what we do. We also do like urine for the people that we do prescribe, and we prescribe very low doses to the patients that need it. We do urine drug screens at least every 3 months as well to make sure that they're compliant, taking things as prescribed, and really we monitor them. But nothing is on site, nothing's given to patients. Anything that we do is going to be sent to a pharmacy electronically, and they'll fill it there.
And doctor, do you find in your particular branch of medicine that the do you tend to have the clinics getting break-ins and things like that, even if you say no medicine's kept on site?
I haven't had it. I mean, I've graduated 6 years ago. In the 6 years, it's not something I experienced. I started in Florida about about 6 years ago, pretty much when I graduated school, and that's about when the laws changed. So I kind of came in as there was a shift away from the pill mill and more to like what we do. So I think a lot of that kind of thing has kind of like come and went, if I had to say, about around that time. So it's not something I had to deal with.
Thank you, Doctor.
Any other questions? I think I read that you have another location in Brevard County, Melbourne.
Yes, we opened up our practice 4 years ago. It's at 395 South Wickham Road in Melbourne, and we have a smaller location in Vieira currently.
Okay, so you've proven with the segment of Brevard County.
Yes, we've never had any issues, nothing against us in any way.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Lori, do we have any cards?
Yes, sir, we have about 7. Terry Friend. Hi there, I'm Terry Friend, and I am a patient with this practice. And I've been going there for about 2.5 years. I can tell you that the practice is top-notch. I've been to several other pain management doctors throughout my life here in Brevard County, and this practice is superior. For you to be able to allow them to come into Titusville, you will be adding a tremendous resource to the community and to the people that live in this area and close by. I live in Cocoa, and I had been coming up here to Titusville, and it's a lot easier for me than going to South Melbourne. They also have the surgical center here in Titusville that he practices at when it's necessary. And he did perform an operation on me there. It went very successful, and the quality of my life since I've been seeing him has improved dramatically. I have a lot of issues going on, so it's not something that you just go in, get a quick fix, and that's it. So for me to be able to establish going to see him on a regular basis monthly, it would help me as well as many other people to have a site in this area. Now, he did refer me to a physical therapist in Titusville, and I can tell you that going to see him twice a week, listening to other people who are going to that practice, I can tell you that patients feel like there's a tremendous need for a really good doctor that cares about their patients, that looks at them as an individual, we're cared about. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about Dr. G and all of his staff. I have referred many of my friends who have had problems to him, and I will continue to do so. So I hope that you will take this into consideration and approve it, because it truly will be a resource in this area that people need and will welcome and will benefit from and use. So,
Any questions? Thank you.
thank you.
Next card, please, Lori.
Sabrina Kennedy.
Yes, you certainly can.
It's on. It'll be sure. It's on. The red light, yeah, it's on.
Yeah, just turn it down.
There you go, so yeah. You good?
Yeah.
Maybe you can move the microphone lower. Yeah, it'll slide down.
I'm gonna have to go.
That's fine. You just press the right button on the right. Hey, babe?
Is it okay if I'm like this?
Yeah, but you're not connected right now. Hang on 1 second. I think something might have happened with the cord.
If the commission is agreeable, we'll give her some extra time other than the 3 minutes. Because I know what she's dealing with.
Okay, can everybody?
We're not on yet. Wait a second.
He's got to turn it on back there. There you go.
When it says the red light, when you see the red light, you can start.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sabrina. I'm a patient of Dr. G's. I want to tell you guys a little about my journey. I have been going through back pain since 2011. I was going to school for a work program, and I bent down to get something off the shelf, and I said, there went my back, and I felt something pull. And then I had pull and tear. Then I had to go to my doctor. He put me on bed rest for a couple weeks. And then I had to go to the hospital because I was in so much pain. I went to several doctors for treatment. Nothing helped my pain. My mom and I did some research on the best pain management doctor, and we came across Dr. G. After the initial appointment, he sent me for a stand-up MRI. He discovered that I had 2 bulging discs and scoliosis in my back, so he started me on a treatment right away. Dr. G has definitely helped me big time. He is the #1 back doctor that we have found. He takes his time with his patients, and his staff is amazing. He knows what he is doing. He is incredible and knows how to take care of his patients. And if you call his office, they will try their best to get you in the same day. I have CP and I'm in a wheelchair, and he takes very good care of me. And he is always there when I need him. And for that, I am truly grateful and blessed. He is the #1 back doctor in town. My mom drives 40 minutes to take me to see him. Please, what I'm asking you guys to do is please allow Dr. G to open an office in Titusville. It could benefit many, not just me. Please consider allowing Dr. G to open his new office as soon as possible. Please and thank you. Thank you so much for listening, and have a blessed evening.
Thank you. And where do you live?
Titusville.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? That took a lot of courage. Next, Lori?
Frank Kempt. Frank.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Frank Capper, and I live at 1515 South Park Avenue in Titusville. And I've had 3 back surgeries starting in 2011, and the last one was in 2022. That same year, the end of the year, I started seeing Dr. Giordano, and when he opened, I think it's the same year that you opened up here in Titusville, I'm not sure. But I did start seeing him right at the end of that year that I had that back surgery, because I was traveling down to Melbourne to see pain management in Melbourne, where I had my back surgery. I had several people down there that were giving me pain management in the Melbourne area. And it was just a real pain. I don't know if you all have had to drive down I-95 at various times of the day. I just did it here this week, and this week, and got caught again. There's an accident on I-95. It was blocked from the 528 down south. Had to pick another route, went over to US 1. Guess what there? It was blocked there also. So I had to endure that, and I was almost late for my appointment. In this case, Dr. Giordano's. He was giving me a pain management shot. No medicine, like he says, is dispensed there. What he does is he gives a lot of shots, and this shot that I got was like a steroid shot, and so I had that. But the drive to Melbourne is a real pain. It's a long drive down there, and also you run the risk of all these problems on I-95. So I prefer that he get his office restored up to Titusville. He was up here and he lost that office. So I would prefer that he gets back to Titusville area, and we can commute a little bit easier up in this area. So I'd appreciate your help in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Next card, please.
David Head.
Good evening. I moved
You
to
might bring the microphone a little closer.
a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
I'm was in the Navy for 23 years, and then I worked with places in places where I had to drive all over the place, and finally went to TGO, and that's where I live today. I was sitting and doing some work when last year, and I found after sitting on the floor, I couldn't get up, and it took me about 5 weeks, 6 weeks before I could get with his my availability, and because I had to go through multiple regular things taken care of, and we live in TGO. But we'd have to go down to Melbourne, and had to go several times, and the better we can get the things here, the better it is off with everybody that I've ran across, and I've tried to do as many people that I know to see the same doctor.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next card.
Robert Rosen.
Hello, my name is Dr. Robert Rosen, and I'm a podiatrist on Garden Street. I just celebrated my 20th anniversary in this fantastic city. I am here in support of Dr. Giordano. In the past, I've had to send patients to Melbourne and even Orlando for chronic pain, most specifically painful diabetic neuropathy, which can be extremely debilitating. And having him up here doing some of these minimally invasive procedures has been a game changer for my patients and my practice. And I'm here in support of him having an office up here.
Thank you, Dr. Rosen. Any questions of Dr. Rosen? Thank you. That's a quick turnaround. Next card, please.
Andrew Pondu.
I've been seeing Dr. G for about 2 years now. I have several areas of pain in my spine area. We went through a series of injections and so forth. He's always been very professional, always lets you know where you're trying to go and what we have to do to get there. And we did reach a point, he's very honest, that he had to refer me to a surgeon, a neurosurgeon in Celebration Place, Dr. Reddy. 5 weeks ago, I had spine surgery and bone removed in 3 places, and it has worked out very successful. I'm still going to see him. That drive down I-95 is tough. It's an hour and a half round trip, and we would appreciate his office being allowed to open here.
Would
So
you give your address, please, for the record?
It's 1577 Seagull Drive, Titusville.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? Thank you. Next card, please.
Debbie Frakes.
Hello, I live at 4592 Serpage Lane in Titusville. I've recently started seeing Dr. G probably in the past couple of months. I've had 3 back surgeries and I've seen about 3 or 4 different pain management doctors. And I have found that Dr. G has just helped me tremendously, more than ever. And so I would just really appreciate it if he could actually have an office here closer to us, that we don't have to do that long drive.
I see no questions. Thank you. Next card.
Angie Nelson.
Hi there. I live on Oak Cove here in Titusville. I also got caught up yesterday in traffic going down 95 for my appointment. And it's been that way for, if it's not that, it's the traffic whizzing by you that you just think they're going to take you away. But I've been seeing Dr. G for, I started around Thanksgiving. I was in such pain that I wasn't even going to be able to fly back to Kentucky for Christmas to see my grandkids and my great-grands. And so I got it all set up, started down there, and he says, we'll have you where you can travel by plane. And I did. I got to go home for Christmas and see my family and all. Still got a few pains, so he's working on those. And before I started with him, I couldn't even hardly get up and down. I couldn't hardly ride in my truck, let alone step up on it. So now he's got that all worked out, and I'm feeling like $1 million. Any questions?
Sounds like a commercial.
Yes.
Thank you. Next card.
That was last card.
Okay. Doctor, do you want to present any other comments before we close the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. It comes back to the commission. Mr. Childs.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of doctors and pain doctors, and having people drive that are having pain in their back, drive so far, it's not ideal. And I think having it here, it's not a pill mill. I think Florida's and the federal government's kind of put an end to a lot of that, and I think it would be a welcome business here in Titusville. So I make a motion to recommend approval to City Council for CUP number 4-2024.
Is there a second?
There's a second right here. I wish you could treat arthritis in a lumbar spine, but I second.
Chairman, just to clarify, does that motion include the staff condition about the fence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Payson.
I second the lumbar thing.
I want to mention the fact that I had a stroke 13 years ago. You may have noticed when I came in the room.
Oh, could I also say, it's great to see people come out. We get so much opposition, you know, and it's great to see people. So please tell anyone else if you're pro something, please come here so we can hear more positive stuff. So thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call, please. Lori?
Member Garad,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Aton,
Yes.
Member Findler,
Yes.
Member Childs.
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Faison,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, that'll be heard next Tuesday at City Council,
Yes, with final hearing at February 11th.
February the 11th. Thank you all for coming out. Next item is item D2. No, it's item D1, easement vacation application.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This item begins on page 29 of 144 of tonight's agenda. Easement vacation number 2, 2024. A petition has been received from Christopher Parente, owner, to vacate a portion of a 10-foot utility easement located at the rear of the property, addressed at 3520 Oak Hill Drive. The existing 10-foot wide utility easement runs along the rear of the property, a distance of 140.58 feet. The applicant's stated intent is to construct a pool, 14 feet by 28 feet, and a screen enclosure. To the west, the utility easements abut Tract U, which is the Lasita Golf Course and private drainage. All required utility letters have been received, and there were no objections to the request to vacate a 10-foot by 47.04-foot portion of the 10-foot rear utility easement. I'd also point the commission to page 33. That's the aerial, if you wanted a visual of the lot with the single-family home and the rear, the portion of the rear easement being requested to be vacated. And then also page 34, which is the survey sketch showing the relation of the easement to the home. With that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Glendo? Mr. Garad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier today, I'd sent staff an email with my questions outlined that I have, and principally what they involve is the result of the vacation will be to allow the homeowner to build a pool. That's a great idea. Happens a lot. In fact, in the correspondence I mentioned that in subdividing land, it's very common that as you go through the reasonably quick process that categorical easement dedications will occur in which they box a lot in a residential lot with easements, typically on 3 of the 4 sides because you have a street frontage, but it's not necessarily unlikely to have easements on all 4 sides of the property. The easements become developed with infrastructure later, and for the perpetuity of the ownership, the lot owner is encumbered with the inability to utilize under the domain of the easement what they could otherwise utilize if the easement wasn't there, because an encumbrance occurs if you develop it without some authority or some allowance. Tonight is a request to provide that allowance by separating the easement that runs along the rear property line. In the email correspondence, and I'm trying to explain the questions to the members, so bear with me, I kind of commented that the first thing I observed is that you're bifurcating an easement. A purpose of the easement when they're along a rear property boundary may be for utility purposes, wherein utility lines, gas lines, and et cetera, which have been confirmed, don't exist by the statements in the letters that are contained. Generally speaking, I read the letters to support the total vacation of the easement because I don't see any evidence where there's any appurtenance, improvements, infrastructure that lies within that rear, what I referred to, and I think the applicants referred to as the west easement. When you bifurcate the easement, it compounds it even further, in my opinion, in my experience, because you now have an easement that would allow for a transmission line, a spectrum cable line, a gas line, electric line, even a drainage swale perhaps. But now that it's bifurcated, you have a portion on one side, a portion on the other, no connection between. I frankly can't see the purpose of maintaining the entire easement whatsoever if the support is for vacation of a portion. I don't want to withhold the property owner's need to build the pool, but the fact that I don't see any evidence in the application where the utilization of the remaining easements necessary, it seems that it would become a difficulty in title transferences in the future where a person might be of the opinion they had an easement. I'm sure you could see a place where a utility company that knows that a portion of the easement's there and a portion of the easement's on the other side goes in and digs a ditch to put a cable line in or other improvements, and all of a sudden they're outside their easement and they could create a problem. And in that kind of an example, there was one letter of support that referenced, and that was the other part of the question. It implies that there may be a need to have infrastructure that exists on this lot within the other dedicated easements. There's a 5-foot, if you look at page 34 of 144, you'll see that it illustrates there's a 5-foot drainage and utility easement on the south boundary of the lot, where if you had an improvement like you might see with a cable, they have like a head that sits there where the cable lines connect. You might even have a utility improvement such as a valve or whatnot that exists within the side easement that wouldn't be subject to vacation. I copied Chelsea with my question as well, wherein it's almost like rock, paper, scissor. You have an easement on 4 sides. By vacating the west easement in the rear, you're not vacating the side yard easements, I believe. That may be something Chelsea can let me know if I'm correct in that. And if that's the assumption, it again enforces my opinion that there doesn't seem to be any purpose in maintaining that easement in the rear, and certainly compounds the ownership's title to have an easement that exists for no purpose being bifurcated by this vacation. Did you, by the chance, since you got the email, find out if there's any improvements within this 10-foot rear easement, west easement as it's referred to?
So the information was actually included in the staff report. If you notice the in the utility letter sections, it was Spectrum that had the unusual language in the letter. And so what the note here says is Spectrum had no objection to the request. However, they state that they will continue to require access to any facilities within the easement. And the question was whether that kind of insinuated that there might be some utilities within the easement. So follow that up. Mr. Mark Richardson, in a phone call with Brad Parrish, confirmed that there are no cables located in that rear easement. And then just to address the other question about the connectivity and the bifurcation that you mentioned. So just to summarize for the commission, what Member Grad is suggesting is that by vacating just the portion, you no longer have a continuous strip of easement that you could lay a line in. And the staff perspective is that at this point, we would only want to vacate the portion that's being requested if it were the case that in the future an easement is required by the utility provider. It's less easement area that needs to be purchased back. You could request that an easement be recorded, and the utility provider could pay the landowner a fee for that right to access the property. Obviously, we'd prefer not to lose that to begin with, but in this case, none of the utility providers have said that they object to this request. And so for the purposes of this request, our perspective is rather than just eliminate the entire easement, just the portion that's being requested, so that if in the future it is needed, then less easement area would need to be purchased back.
I appreciate that. If I may, I think that's admirable, but if I were the landowner, I'd be the Tripolian pirate that would charge the easement request as much as possibly I could charge, because I know you had no alternative. You'd have to connect one to the other across this bridge of size. And I think that's the disservice. I think that it's going to compound itself. Indeed, that in the time that takes for the manifestation of an improvement to occur, where a rerouting of a line, like a cable vision in the case of Spectrum. I've personally seen Spectrum run cable lines across the yard like a serpentine snake. They don't even care where, especially if it's only to serve the landowner that the service goes to. But if they're serving a connection, like I mentioned, where they put their junction box in that corner where it's already within the remaining easement, it would be unlikely. And I think the Spectrum letter kind of anticipates the unlikeliness of that by saying, but on the other hand, you have to let us do it. No, you don't. Once that's vacated, the landowner doesn't have to let anybody do anything back there unless they want to pay. And where I see the problem of partial vacation and this bifurcation is lost in the shuffle as the crew gets sent out to do something and they look at the thing and say, yeah, there's an easement back there, let's cut the ditch. And the landowner comes home to a ditch and says, what's this ditch doing behind my pool deck? Or you cracked my pool deck when you dug the ditch. He says, we have an easement. And then later everybody goes through the shuffle of finding out indeed you didn't. And it's the bifurcation of the easement that concerns me far more than the allowance to build the pool. In my opinion, it's creating a potential future problem that would be well served if there's no need for that easement, if there's no overarching necessity by any of these utility companies. I don't know that the partial vacation can be amplified with a full easement vacation as a routine matter. I would imagine you're going to have a notification, you're going to have a legal description, you're going to have the public hearing, may have to be amended. But at the end of the day, 10, 15 years down the road when the problem may occur, this would be a good time to prevent that occurrence, because if it's totally vacated, there wouldn't be the bifurcated sections. And the questions I had for Chelsea was basically, when I copied you, was does the corner easement remain in what my rock, paper, scissor analogy, where the side easement's there regardless of the vacation of this 10 feet? The language would read something like dedicated 5-foot easement on side yards, dedicated 10-foot easement on rear yards. If you vacate one, you are not vacating the others. Kind of technical question, I'm sorry.
I think the request is for any easement, I'm sorry. I think the request is for the easement of the right-of-way only and not any other utility easements to be vacated. Because that would be a separate request from those people granting those utility easements and whatnot.
So in the definition that the plat provides, that there is a 10-foot rear yard easement, and I couldn't blow up the page, and I'm sorry, the Brevard County clerk of the courts doesn't allow you access to plat books, or I would have read it myself. So I'm only going by experience that a typical dedication I'm familiar with would say some language like, there shall be a 5-foot utility and drainage easement on all side yards, and then another sentence would say there'll be a 10-foot rear yard easement on all rear yards, or west or north or south. But by vacating a rear yard easement so designated, you haven't vacated the side. So a utility improvement appurtenance like a spectrum cable a connection head that sits in that back corner in both the rear yard easement as well as the side yard easement is still there, unaffected by the vacation.
Correct, because any vacation of a right-of-way to the city of Titusville is only to the right-of-way to the city of Titusville and doesn't speak to any easement granted to any other entity. We can't have that power.
So these utility companies, including the city, which is Public Works, have agreed that this partial vacation is acceptable. My question is, would vacating the rear easement in entirety vacate the side easement? What sits over top of one, or does the other remain? I believe I'm correct to say if you vacate a rear easement dedicated by the plat referred to as side yard, rear yard, it doesn't vacate the other underlying easement.
I'd agree.
Thank you. So my point to this is a problem that can occur, and I would ask the applicant when they approach it if whether they would consider wanting to look at this for requesting a modification for a total vacation easement and not create a pending problem. Thank you for your answers.
Any other questions of the staff? Okay, at this time I'll open the public hearing. The applicant, is the applicant here? Is the applicant here? Applicant is not here. Do we have any cards?
I'm just not sure. Is Bob Watwood, are you here for this item?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, which item did you want to speak on?
The D3 or something, the small scale comp plan amendment?
Okay, well, we want to make sure you have that part in. Lori, do you have that?
It just says 8D, so I wasn't sure which
Okay.
one he was on.
Any other person here? No, there's not. We'll close the public hearing. Eddie, how do you feel about what Mr. Garrard suggested we can't do that without the applicant being here, can we?
To vacate the entire rear easement, I believe we would have to re-advertise the request, and so that's not what we're being presented tonight.
Yeah. And so your recommendation is for approval,
We
right?
recommended approval, correct?
Okay. Member Rogers.
Eddie, so once, like, I assume this is the case, but once the easement has been vacated, the owner owns the land all the way to China, right? I mean, you don't have to, like, there are a lot of these new, sort of sideways drilling units for cables and pipes and things like that. I mean, you need to get, they own, I don't know what the mineral rights or what, I don't know, they own the land under, like, somebody can't send something under the pool deck or the easement, even if it's empty, without their permission?
That's a good question. So since it's an easement, what that means is the property owner currently owns that property. It's just that certain corporations or organizations have a right to, to access that area.
Okay.
And usually it's for digging a trench to lay a transmission line. It can also be can be an easement for stormwater conveyance.
Okay.
So there's a number of reasons why there might be an easement, and usually they're to the city or cable companies, Power, FPL. And so your question of whether another entity could drill under the property owner's land, it's currently their land today, so it would still be the same issue of them violating the property owner's rights, unless the drilling is being done for a reason that the utility provider has rights to because of the easement. So if the utility provider has the right to lay a transmission line there, then they could currently dig a transmission line there.
And as of now, I know Spectrum, was Spectrum the only entity that actually had cable there or had something there, some asset, or are they thinking that there will be in the future?
Spectrum did confirm that they have no cables in that rear lot, in that rear easement.
Thank you.
Mr. Garrard.
I would just again like to have the commission recognize potential isn't necessary, but it's at least a likelihood. So potentially, the question Mr. Rogers has is on point. Lateral horizontal boring is a matter of convenience. It's expeditious. You've probably seen it done around town. You've probably seen it done somewhere where you bring in equipment in the morning, and by late afternoon, they can horizontally drill a line through the ground and never break the surface. It could start at one place and continue all the way down some other place at distances in which the second part of that, the potential, is when you do this easement vacation, there's a recordation of the action of the city council to vacate. The plat book and page, which are oftentimes observed by staff when they go to do something, is something subject to being reviewed. A crew that would work on a job would quickly access the plat book and see, we have an easement in the rear, crew, go laterally, horizontally drill our gas line in the back of that house and go underneath the pool deck. And everything's okay until the homeowner comes home and says, what is this underneath my deck? Well, it's our gas line in the easement. Well, no, we vacated that easement in that section. And imagine where you are at that point. Conjecture tells me at a very bad point. I've got it there, so now I've got to get permission to do it after the fact. I mentioned earlier the Terpolian pirate recognition. If I'm the landowner, I'm going to look at whoever that is and say, please bring me your checkbook. Or take that pipe out from underneath my deck. And an easy mistake to be made, wherein if the easement is vacated entirely, it would seem less likely to occur, but it still could. It still could happen. The same scenario could still happen, but maybe perhaps less likely wherein the easement is totally vacated. My concern is for the future property owner as well as the current one, and I don't think bifurcating a public utility easement in the middle is the best service for a public utility. It is an easement going nowhere and can connect nowhere. I don't see any purpose in that. Thank you.
Member Charles.
When the utilities were asked, though, they were just asked about this one piece of the easement, right? Of being vacated, not the whole thing.
The utility letters are provided. Let me get the page number. They
Yeah.
begin on page 35. And so it specifies the west, in parentheses, rear public utility easement located at lot 156. So it's not very clear that it's just
Just a
the,
part of it. I think the likelihood of anything happening is very, very low. And I think if you've gone through the trouble of getting the utilities to say something, I don't know that there's much harm in just doing a partial, especially since they're not here to ask. And then we'd also have to redo it. And then, you know, it's cold now, so you don't need to pull now, but you need to pull by summer, which would be nice. And things move slow. So, I mean, you might miss your whole pull opportunity this summer. But I don't see a problem with moving forward with doing a partial, because when you look at that property and the easements that are already there and the utilities are already there, there's very little likelihood of drilling for new gas lines or anything else, any other utilities that are already established in the area, so.
Member Grodd.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. That is exactly what I'm trying to suggest is my point. There's no purpose in it. I would even go as far as to say that the review of the application to partially vacate the easement was probably review of, do we really need the easement whatsoever? Question for Eddie, what would occur if this was continued to allow the applicant to appear, which I certainly think would be behooving the applicant to maybe know their feeling on this, and to amend the description so the request would be formally made for a total easement vacation of this west easement? Is there a cost incurred in it, and what timing would be?
as far as the city, there would be no cost incurred. You would table it to a date certain. To get additional information, that would require a new survey with new legal description that I can't estimate the time on that. I've heard surveyors are backed up. So it could take some considerable time. I don't know how much that would cost. And yeah, sorry, I think that's it.
So the surveying is to establish if there was anything in the easement, physical improvements, together with the easements, because the easement's recorded as a reference on a plat book, so a vacation by the easement recorded by that plat book, I can't really see where the survey has a lot to do with it. I do recognize survey requirements when the encroachment currently exists, wherein a homeowner inadvertently built something over the easement and now has to vacate the easement, so the survey shows the illustration of the improvements that are encumbering the easement. In this case, it's vacant, and the description is as it's buttoned in the plat book page, easement rear west as designated. A survey would only expand the description to be that. Instead of 10 feet of, it would be the easement. So I'm not sure if all that's going to be so time consuming, but again, everyone has their own opinion. In my opinion, my experience, what's left, the remnants of that easement, have a potential to create a problem for a future homeowner. And that should be what we're looking at as opposed to the immediacy. And it's not summer yet, but it's time to allow an owner to consider, do they understand what this does, as I've expressed myself? And if they were able and willing to dialogue with us, perhaps they may say, hey, that's a good idea. I wouldn't want that to happen. Thank you.
Member Faison.
Eddie, so is this something that you could possibly convey to the owners after if we do so pass this, that once you let them know that this has been approved, that this was a concern they may want to look into at a future date, that they may want to vacate the other pieces of the easement and make it one continuous vacation after we've completed this one that's before us today?
Sure.
Member Findler.
I was just going to say I agree with Member Garott. I think it's just, you keep it simple. There's less likely an error or an issue in the future. And I know we say right now there's not going to be an issue, but I think we're making it more complicated by bifurcating it rather than just simply removing all of the easement in the back. So that's just my 2 cents.
Any other comments? Mr. Grodd.
I actually agree with the idea that ask the owner after the fact and prior to the city council's final determination, if the applicant wanted to change this and postpone the city council's action, would it come back to us if they said, I want to continue this to follow the suit and request total vacation? Second question is if they followed the lead suggested that they consider this and come back and go, that is something I don't want to worry about, so I'll make another application for additional vacation of easement. Is that something that, due to this circumstance, you could look at the filing fees and necessities for filing that as complimentary under the consideration we're having, rather than prohibitive, saying, well, I don't want to file another $500 request just to vacate the easement?
The first question about whether it would come back to P&Z if he expanded the request, the answer is yes. The second question about application fees, I can't answer.
Any other comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move
Vice
to,
Chair Aton.
sorry. I'll move to approve EAS number 2-2024-3250 Oak Hill Drive as presented with the request that Eddie have the discussion as discussed with the applicant.
Is there a second? Is that, do you remember facing 1 second or?
Yes,
not?
sir, I second.
Okay, any other discussion? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Faison,
Yes.
Member Childs.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Aton.
Yes.
Member Garad,
Yes.
Member Findler,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes.
And Chairman, just to clarify for the minute's sake, as far as the conversation that is expected to happen after this meeting, is I will convey to the applicant that the commission would prefer or suggested reconsidering including the entire rear easement.
Great.
Thank you.
When will this be heard? When will it go before city council? February the 8th?
January 28th.
Next
Mr.
week?
Chairman?
Okay.
I had one last question for staff before you move on.
Okay.
With your discussion with the applicant, would you take the opportunity to contact the utility providers that have signed these letters and put forth the question I had? If the total easement vacation was requested, would they therein support it? And then you can give that information to the applicant at the time you discuss it. I think that's critical. If they had an opposition to it, I certainly wouldn't want them to bark up the tree. But if there is no opposition and they would support it just like they supported this, I'd appreciate that.
So I have no problem with reaching out to the utility providers to pitch that question. I don't know what their timelines are to return a response, and this is scheduled to be heard by council next week. So I will have the conversation or attempt to. I don't know if I'll have all answers from the utility providers by then.
Thank you. Next item 8D2, SSA number 7, 2024.
Thank you, sir. Yes, this item begins on page 53. The applicant is requesting a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment with rezoning to market and redevelop the property for commercial purposes. The property is located at the southwest corner of South Street and Lane Avenue and was previously owned by Brevard Public Schools as the site of the Whispering Hills Primary School. At the July 11th, 2023 school board meeting, the Whispering Hills facility was declared unnecessary or unsuitable for educational, or ancillary purposes after years of deferred maintenance. The board's declaration made by adopting Resolution 2022-03 facilitated the sale of the property to private owners. The city's current comprehensive plan, education, future land use designation, and public P zoning district do not support private development of the site. The request is illustrated on the attached future land use and zoning maps and can generally be described as retaining the future land use of the north portion of the property as downtown mixed use and changing the middle of the property to commercial high intensity and the south portion of the property to commercial low intensity. In their request, the applicant stated that the proposed future land use pattern is in response to 2 community meetings held with surrounding property owners. The applicant further stated the request allows for a step-down approach in intensity to allow for more intense development near State Road 405, South Street, and less intense development to the south where the property is adjacent to single-family residences. An environmental assessment was conducted on site in support of the request to replace the conservation, future land use designation, and open space and recreation OR zoning district located on the west side of the property. The environmental assessment found no evidence of wetlands on site, which supports the requested change. I'll read the findings, highlights of findings from staff's analysis, items that support the proposed request. The current educational future land use designation and public zoning is limited to public institutional uses only. The environmental report determined that no wetlands are present on site. The current conservation future land use designation and open space and recreation zoning on the west portion of the site may be amended to reflect that these are upland areas. The amendment will increase the cumulative acreage of non-residential future land use category to provide goods and services to residents. Commercial uses on the subject property would offer a high degree of accessibility of non-residential goods and services to the surrounding residential properties. Designating the south portion of the subject property commercial low-intensity future land use helps to protect the adjacent single-family residences. If City Council is inclined to approve the requested future land use change to commercial high intensity, then staff recommends approval of the rezoning to community commercial CC as consistent with the future land use designation. Potential issues that may not support the proposed request include the surrounding area is predominantly residential in nature. A commercial future land use designation at this site does not support a high degree of clustering with other commercial land uses, and certain auto-oriented uses permitted in the CC zoning district may be incompatible with the adjacent single-family residential development if they are a predominant use on the 10-acre property. Staff recommends approval of the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan. This recommendation is based upon the staff analysis, information, and evidence presented, and in accordance with the city charter of the City of Titusville, the Code of Ordinances, and Land Development Regulations, Section 34-23 of the Code, the adopted comprehensive plan, and the provisions of Chapter 163 and 166 Florida statutes. Rezoning recommendation, staff recommends approval of the rezoning request consistent with the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment to change the zoning on the subject property from public P and open space and recreation OR to community commercial CC on property located at 800 Lane Avenue as described in Exhibit A of the ordinance. This recommendation is based upon the staff analysis, information, and evidence presented, and in accordance with the city charter of the City of Titusville, Code of Ordinances, and Land Development Regulations, Section 34-40 of the Code, adopted comprehensive plan, and the provisions of Chapter 163 and 166 Florida statutes. Lastly, just wanted to point the commission to page 97. Page 97 is going to be the aerial overview of the property where you can see the existing school facility, South Street to the north, Lane Avenue to the east. The next page is the future land use map as it currently sits on the left and the proposed pattern on the right. On the left-hand side, it's the downtown mixed-use designation along State Road 405, the little pocket of conservation on the west side, and then the majority of the site is in education. And then the proposed would keep most of the DMU, or keep all of the DMU along the north part of South Street, with the commercial high in the middle and the commercial low to the south. And then lastly, the last page is the next page is the zoning sheet. And so we've got the existing zoning on the left, which is primarily P public with a pocket of open space and recreation. And then the proposed zoning on the right is entirely community commercial. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? Secretary Grant.
Mr. Galindo, what sort of feedback did you get from the community meetings? There was no indication that I could see, that just the fact that they had them, but there was nothing to say how it was received.
Sure. We receive a community engagement report after the community engagement meetings, but I would defer to the applicant to really express the breadth of the discussion that was had at those, just because staff doesn't attend those.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Rogers.
Eddie, the downtown mixed use, what are the height limits on that? Was it 35 feet?
So the downtown mixed use in the future land use that you see, the blue is a future land use designation. It's not gonna have development standards the way a zoning district would. So it's not DMU zoning, which is a different category. So if you'd like the DMU, the max height limit in the DMU zoning, I could give that to you, but it wouldn't be applicable to this site.
Because
Because the requested zoning is CC, community commercial, and it's currently zoned P public.
Okay. So as far as height goes for the commercial high intensity and commercial low intensity, I guess I'm just trying to get an idea of height is one of the things that bothers me. And I think can be excessive and to the detriment of a community. So I'm just trying to understand, the DMU stays the same. So that doesn't change, but the commercial high intensity, commercial low intensity, I saw there were floor area ratio. Like you couldn't have bigger than 30,000, square feet or something.
If your concern is how tall the buildings at a maximum would be allowed on the site,
Yes.
I would look at the maximum building height of the requested CC zoning district, because those are the development standards that would apply if this application's approved, and I can look that up. Oh, Tabitha beat me to it. Maximum height says none, so there's no maximum building height. However, the way that the code works is it's a setback per height.
Yeah.
And, okay, so we've covered that before. So basically, the taller the building, the further setback, and it essentially limits the height of the building. There's just no fixed number in the zoning code that tells you what max height that would be.
Any other questions of the staff? Okay, is the applicant here? Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelly Hivonen Delmonico. I am the planning consultant on behalf of the property owner that is 800 Land LLC. And I will answer a couple of those questions that you just asked at the end of my presentation, or I might hit on it a little bit in the middle of my presentation. To get a better understanding of the requests that we are looking for today, I'm going to hop back a little bit in time and talk about the history of this property and my experiences I've had with this property and with the community in the surrounding area. As Eddie pointed out, this was a school board property. It was Whispering Hills Primary School, which was a K-3, built in 1959. It hasn't been used for educational purposes for many years. So it's dilapidated, there's trespassers. We're trying to get it to a point where the property can be redeveloped for something else. Brevard County School Board back in 2021 declared this to be surplus property and offered it for sale in 2021. My experience with this property starts in 2022 when I was approached by a different client at the time who was interested in developing this property residentially. This property, as you can recall from the zoning map, has zoning to the east and to the north of R3, which is high-density multifamily residential. And at that time, we drew up some concept plans of what R3 could provide on this site, and we went forward with a community meeting with the neighbors. Do I just ask for the next slide to progress it? Oh. And just so I know, are you all looking behind me to see that, or is this in front of you? It's both. Okay. Well, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll pause as well as I'm continuing. Look at that. That's fancy. So the first community meeting that I held on behalf of a separate client was back in April of 2022. So that's the image is just showing the invitation letter I sent out and the signatures. The signatures don't reflect the total of everyone that was there. There's probably 20 to 25 people that came. It was well attended and there was good discussion. And what we showed at the time, if you look on the right, you will see the site plan on that 10 acres showing several three-story multifamily apartment buildings in there. It was kind of an expression of what is the highest and best use for this property? We're right next to high-intensity residential. We have high and low-intensity single-family to our east and our south, and we have high-intensity multifamily residential to the north. So that concept that was presented is also indicated in some of those photo renderings on the right side of the screen as well. So the community provided a lot of useful feedback. Number one was we had shown two driveways onto Lane. The first is kind of in the middle because you have to pull it back from South Street. And the other one had a driveway on the very south side of the site where Lane Avenue kind of comes around to the west. So the first piece of feedback was, hey, we have this issue of people cutting through our neighborhood. That was very clear. People come from South Street, down Lane Avenue, cut through the neighborhoods, which is a problem with or without development happening on this site. So the feedback was, let's remove that driveway on the south side and limit where we're sending vehicles on Lane and try to have more people enter from South Street. They wanted additional or wider sidewalks on Lane, additional buffering to the south next to the established single-family residences, and they wanted the buildings as far north as possible. So overall, the community understood that the existing institutional future land use that's there today needs to be changed to something else to allow for private development. However, many of the residents didn't appear to feel comfortable with the change to the residential use due to perceived noise of residents, the fact that residents are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the likelihood of taller buildings close to their properties. If this property comes forward with a residential use, the likelihood of having multiple stories is very high because that's how you would develop residential. But from a commercial standpoint, this property in this location, you're looking at probably a single story, even though the zoning code technically doesn't have a limit. You're really, if you have commercial here, it's likely to be more of a single story for where this is located. It's not in a downtown. It's more of in a suburban area. Ultimately, the client that I was working with on this one stepped away from the property and canceled their contract with the school board. So then fast forward a little bit longer, more than a year later in mid-2023, I was connected with a new client who is now the current owner of the property. At the time, they were interested in purchasing the property, and so we met with the city and we decided to move forward with a community meeting, again, with a different concept plan. So what I did with the client that I have now and the current property owner is I shared those experiences that I had with the community and their feedback. So with their issues with the residential uses and the likelihood of the higher height and the people being there 24 hours a day, I suggested maybe moving forward with a commercial zoning instead of the residential, especially if the commercial uses could include something that would be useful or beneficial to the neighborhood and the region as a whole. So in October 2023, the property was purchased by 800 Land LLC. The second community meeting was August of 2024. That feels like a very long time ago now. But that meeting also had about 20 to 25 people attendant. We had a good conversation, and it was a different conversation this time because what was brought in front of them was a commercial product. So I'm going to move to here. The concept plan that we presented is on the right-hand side. And just to orient you really quick, Lane is on the east, South Street is on the north. You have the multifamily zoning to the north, you have the multifamily zoning to the west. You have single-family low intensity to the south, and then you kind of have a mix of high and medium intensity single-family to the east, as well as the senior center that continues down Lane Road to the east, is what it's surrounded by. So based on the feedback that I had received at that 2022 community meeting, we presented the following, trying to be within keeping of what the community seemed to desire. So we placed the buildings as far north as possible. What you're seeing in front of you, that circle, that's just representative of stormwater. This is not an engineered plan, this is an architectural plan. it's hard to see colors, but the two buildings on the north side that are touching, there's a yellow building and there's a blue building. And those are both labeled just retail, kind of as placekeepers. But the idea for that blue building, which is the northeast corner there, would be, we'd love to do indoor pickleball. So as we all know, pickleball is loud. People don't like it outside. So indoor pickleball is kind of what people are doing. And then what you see, those rectangles to the south, they're orange. There's several in a row. Those are just indicating volleyball courts. So that would be outdoor recreation. So along with this plan, we also removed the entrance that was there previously on the south side along Lane Avenue. We kept the Lane Avenue entrance kind of in the middle because it's far enough away from South Street and as far north as we could push it. It includes a sidewalk along Lane Avenue, a secondary drive onto South Street, and because we're trying to get these driveways as far from intersections as possible, it's all the way to the west. Large buffering to the south. And I also want to note that outdoor recreation is a conditional use. So anything like this that were to happen would have to come back through the process to get a conditional use. So nothing I'm asking about today would tie us to this site plan or allow us to get a conditional use. That would be separate. So this kind of gets into the web of why we're requesting community commercial and why we have this step-down approach to the future land use designations. So why do we need community commercial zoning? It's because it's the only zoning district, the lowest intensity zoning district that allows indoor recreation for limited uses and allows for outdoor recreation with a conditional use. All the other zoning districts that allow that are higher intensity or our regional activity center, which doesn't really apply to us. So this is the one we had to request. And then in order to get that CC zoning, our only options for that per section 2727 is commercial low intensity or commercial high intensity. So my first blush on this was commercial low intensity would be great because we're not looking for the intensity of the high. However, there is a section of code, I didn't mean to change that I placed in front of you, and I kind of highlighted the reason why we can't go all commercial low intensity. And it's because in order to have commercial low intensity, oh, I lost mine. I'll give it to you, thank you. So it's saying if you're community commercial in commercial low intensity, if you have more than one business use in a single center that doesn't have a grocery store in it, which I can't say we're anticipating a grocery store, the maximum square footage of your total square footage can't exceed 40,000 square feet. This is a 10-acre site. To restrict us to 40,000 square feet, it would make it kind of unusable. And not to mention, then number 2 says, no more than 2 individual uses shall contain more than 3,000 square feet. And the average area of the uses of the development shall not exceed 10,000 square feet. This language was designed for a tiny little strip center that maybe had 2 or 3 uses in it that were very small, around 3,000 square feet apiece. That makes the CLI future land use not possible for this site. So then when we made our application, we said, okay, well, then we have to go for commercial high intensity with the community commercial. So that's how we ended up where we did. I know that's confusing. Happy to answer questions. I know Eddie's very well versed in it as well. So our proposal at the time we met with the community, it still shows that downtown mixed use future land use strip along the top, and then everything to the south is commercial high intensity. And then my next slide, I'll get into how we changed it. So the feedback I received at this meeting with the commercial uses was, they were concerned with the trespassing that was taking place in the vacant school building. There was, again, still very severe concern with the cut-through traffic on Lane Avenue, that maybe there is some way the city can address that in the future through some type of project. A request, again, for a nice landscape buffer to the south. They had a concern with allowing something like a gas station or mini storage on the site. And And the other things I heard was, well, if a school reopened here, there'd be more traffic than there would be with either residential or commercial use. And then another one was rezoning would allow for something new, something that they could use. And then overall, and this is me saying it, I don't want to speak for the neighbors, but it seemed that the neighbors may prefer a commercial use at this location rather than the previously presented R3 zoned use, based on the feedback I heard and what people talked about at the meeting. So because the last time we had met with the neighbors, we told them we were requesting the DMU future land use with the commercial high intensity, I did send out a letter in advance of the meeting today that let them know we were changing our future land use request. So you can see the image on the right shows it all being commercial high intensity below the DMU. And then the image on the right shows, or in the middle, excuse me, shows the addition of the commercial low intensity along, I think it's the south 200 feet of the property. And what that CLI does is it also does things like it puts a solid height restriction on it of 35 feet, but logistically, you're not going to get a 35-foot commercial building there. If we have our way in a perfect world, we'd have no buildings back there and we'd have volleyball courts or something. Let's see here. This addition of the CLA to the south portion of the property would allow for increased protections to the neighbors to the south while not having the negative impacts from the section of code that I was referencing, because this removes any economic feasibility from the project if it was all CLI. See where I left off. Again, this is showing the existing and the proposed future land use based on our amendment. So we'd be removing the conservation future land use as there's no environmentally sensitive areas present and no wetlands, which was shown in our environmental report. And the current proposed designations allow for a step-down approach. So from the DMU to the commercial high intensity to the commercial low intensity, to allow more intense development near South Street and less intense development to the south where the property is adjacent to single-family residential. We feel like the request for the commercial high-intensity, commercial low-intensity future land use along with the CC zoning is the least intense request we could make to allow us to explore the options of indoor and outdoor recreation, which again would require conditional use for outdoor recreation. The CC zoning is consistent with the proposed CHI and CLI future land use designations. And based on the staff report, the proposed land uses and zoning are generally compatible with the surrounding areas. While they are surrounded all by residential land uses, there is high-density multifamily zoning to the north and the west as well. The development restrictions for CC zoning will limit the intensity and height of any commercial use here as well. We are consistent in many ways with the comprehensive plan and would need to also be in compliance with land development regulations at the time of conditional use or site plan. So approving this zoning will allow for neighborhood commercial and recreational needs to be met. It's located in an area that is high-intensity residential to the north and west. The current institutional future land use and zoning does not allow for private development or redevelopment, and we are requesting what we believe to be the best commercial future land use and zoning given the circumstances. The property owner would like to redevelop the property in accordance with the city's comprehensive plan and land development regulations. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and also reserve some time at the end in case I need to respond to any comment.
One comment I would make is I commend you for 3 community meetings. I don't think any other applicant has had as many.
I've had 2.
Responded to them like you have.
Thank you.
Member Faison.
There's a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot,
There's a
yeah.
lot to unpack here. First question to Chelsea. Can I mention any other projects? Huh? What do you need mentioned? Carrefour. So, all right, so it begins with this. In Brevard County or North Brevard County, there have been 3 different schools that have been up for purchase. Kyler Park, one across from LaGrange, the one on LaGrange, and now here on South Street. The one at Cala Park fell apart because of the amount of money that it took to renovate it. The one at LaGrange turned into an ALF that has now been sitting defunct for quite some time, right across from the LaGrange Cemetery. And then now we have the one here, right here at Whispering Hills. So there's a need in our community right now for the homeless and for that, and that's where Carrefour comes in. So there's a need for homelessness, homeless shelters or people that need help. And this is a public building currently today owned by the school board that they want to sell. I don't understand why this can't turn into a project for the homeless, as they were trying to do out at Kyler, that fell apart. So I see that here. So there's a need for folks, and here's a government building that's available, but we're gonna put it on the market for private entrepreneurship. And I have no problem with private entrepreneurship. I have no problem with that. But we have a government building that's available, and we have people that are homeless right now in the city of Titusville. So I'm trying to make those things make sense. And again, I know that this was an architectural drawing that we were looking at tonight, but it showed the water retention on the hill. That made no sense to me, because I know that property. It slopes down, and so you have all the construction down here, but you're going to hold the water up top. I know you can level it and grade it, but it just makes no sense to move all that earth when you already have a low-lying area. You put the water there. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know. I just wish this property would do something better for the community, since it's already purchased and owned by the government. I just wish that there was some way that you guys can work with those folks. For example, Carrefour was going in a neighborhood those folks were having up in arms. This would have been a great place to put it. Right on South Street, right on a collector street, owned by the government. I mean, that would have been a great place to do this. I don't know what's going to happen next, but if you can't find an owner, I mean, a program like that would probably do well in a spot like that. That's all.
Sure.
Member Garrett, do you want to
Thank you,
respond?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, is
go
that
ahead and
okay?
respond, yeah.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. I was just going to let you know, so my client has purchased the property in 2023. So it is privately owned. It's no longer owned by the government. And so the building is pretty decrepit and ready to be demolished and redeveloped.
Would you not agree that could have possibly been a good opportunity for a program to offer? Because are you familiar with Kyler Park out in Mims?
I know Carrefour well, actually.
No, not Carrefour. Kyler Park in Mims.
No, I'm
All
not.
right, so there's a park called Kyler Park in Mims, and they had tried to purchase the property and put in wraparound services for that community, because there's nobody out there providing those services in the community, medical, dental, even some places for homeless folks to live at, all this good stuff out at Kyler Park. Well, that program fell apart because of funding. All right, again, that was a school that it was called Kyler Elementary. That's something that could have happened here as well. I just see the opportunity, but it's past now. Like I said, your client has now purchased the property. And so we're looking at doing, and then, so you mentioned the R3 to the west, but that R3 to the west hasn't been built. And,
Correct.
And the high intensity that's across the street, I'm just thumbs up on that one there. You know what I mean? Thumbs up. So it was kind of,
Yes, absolutely. And the development potential is definitely there to the north and the west. Unfortunately, for like a Carrefour to be able to come in and develop this, they would also need to rezone it and change the future land use on it.
Yeah, but so the benefit there is there's more likely less going against them. There'll be more people in favor of that location than where they currently are now. As well as one of the biggest issues was traffic going in and out. They wouldn't have that there. We were talking about walkability, and we're looking at the that scale, that rating scale when it comes to affordability, where you're looking at right now. You have public transportation right there. You have walking right to grocery stores. There are more services available right there than what Carrefour is going to be currently. So that location where you are right now would have been perfect for Carrefour, opposed to where they are now. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, I understand. And I would be curious to know what the input from the neighbors would be on that, because they did express concern with affordable housing and apartments in general
NIBI exists
with
everywhere,
this.
doesn't it? NIBI exists everywhere.
It
NIBI
exists
means not-
everywhere.
Not in my backyard.
Yes.
That's everywhere.
Yes, yes.
Member Garad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the applicant's representative, and thank you for your presentation. In the staff report, they illustrate that you did not present a concept plan, but tonight you've presented a concept plan, and you mentioned, if I may continue, you mentioned several times that you presented variations of that plan with your community meetings. Can you explain why you haven't provided staff with a similar presentation of a concept plan?
Absolutely. We're not in a position to enter into a binding concept plan. So the city of Titusville has the ability, when you're seeking something like a rezoning, to submit a binding plan. We are not in a position to do that. You have to, in order for a site, especially if this was a single user going in and it was an acre site and they knew exactly what they wanted to do, like I want to do a car wash and open that up here today with this zoning and this conditional use, we would have absolutely submitted a site plan. But unfortunately, in this circumstance, we need to get some type of future land use and zoning in place to be able to get the investors and the businesses to sign up to go here. So there has been talks with different businesses that provide this indoor-outdoor recreation. We've also been in talks with a restaurant that provides amusements. I can't get more specific than that, but different types of businesses, but none of them can sign on to this or put money into this until there is a zoning that they know that provides them a path forward. Right now, it's kind of like we have no zoning. So we had to forego a formal conceptual site plan with this. So every time I presented this to any community meeting, I was very clear that this is conceptual only and we're not tied to this.
I have two more questions. One for staff. I'm not really familiar with what conceptual plans are for the city's presentation purposes. How much would the presentation of the plan that was provided tonight reflect a conceptual plan for the city's requirements?
It's not a level of detail. It's more so that the applicant has identified that this is the plan that they would like bound to their zoning district.
So this could be a conceptual plan?
Sure.
For the city. And the third question for you, the applicant again, is in your document, you've stated, which I think you've reiterated just in the last response, that the property owner desires to market the development site. You're not the end developer. You're a landowner looking to sell the property to someone who will buy it and do something with it based on the requested land use and zoning.
It could go many various ways. They could be looking for joint ventures. They could be looking for a couple different users, somebody to come in and construct and have multiple units for rent. They might have end users in mind. It's unknown at this point how that will play out until we get a zoning.
So would that play into why you don't have a binding conceptual plan, but merely a discussion with the neighbors of what might be, but what will be if you obtain the zoning and land use changes will be marketability, whatever the market demands, as you put it earlier, I think.
Well, and it has to fit for the location and the neighborhood and what the market is calling for in this area.
Thank you.
So, yep, okay.
Member Rogers.
Could you please pronounce your last name again? I don't want to try it.
Sure, Hyvonen Delmonico, that's not my last name anymore, so
Oh, okay.
a lot has changed since I applied.
I think I will just call you ma'am.
Delmonico is fine.
Okay, Ms. Delmonico then. I was just trying to understand why this focus on recreation. It would seem to me, is it because of the senior center nearby? It's not, doesn't seem like much of a profit center.
Really, that's what we've been seeing in the markets lately. I had worked on another project in Satellite Beach as well, where they brought in indoor pickleball. People love pickleball, but people hate being next to outdoor pickleball. So it's just different concepts for what could be useful and what would be well-served for this area and what the market would support.
And so people, as far as return on investment, people have to join the club or something like that to play the pickleball?
Yeah, there's different various ways that you can do membership pickleball, but yeah, it'd be kind of like a gym.
Okay. And, you mentioned probably not putting a grocery store there. I was just thinking, I'm sure you're familiar with the term, you're a city planner.
Yes, sir.
You're familiar then with the term food desert, and I think that there might be, maybe it's not a food desert, but it's maybe a food dry spot. And so it seems to me that possibly a grocery store of some sort might be welcome there. But of course, that's up to the businesses, but I mean, the owners to decide. But I certainly wouldn't want that rejected out of hand.
Oh, no, we would not reject that. That would be very welcome. It's just not something we can guarantee, but I love me an Aldi.
Yeah, I actually, I like the stepping concept of the same piece of property, but this zoning, this zoning, this zoning. Is that something that you have used typically before, or is this a new idea by the owner or by you?
I would say that it's not typical, but I've used it before in various cities. As it's really, this was a result of us trying to figure out how to get the least intense zoning and future land use in here that would fit our needs, while working around, the web of code and the things that have happened over time. So it's reactionary moving through it to try to get something that does make sense for the property. So not typical, but also not unheard of. I do a lot of work in Melbourne, and we have a lot of split zoning or split future land use parcels.
Yeah, it's interesting. One more, may I direct a question at Eddie, or is that time passed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Eddie, so there would, given the surrounding residential areas, there would be some mechanism of limiting the types of businesses there, like, they wouldn't be shipbuilding, for example, like at all hours of the night and stuff. I mean, it's kind of, there are some restrictions on the noise and on the smells and on, whatever. I remember seeing that somewhere, I believe.
As far as uses, yes. So uses are outlined in the use table, and so the requested CC zoning district would guide what uses would be permissible there, and shipbuilding is not permitted in CC. But as far as nuisances, those are other sections of the code. There's a standalone noise section, for example, that has the decibel levels that can't be exceeded. Those are just throughout the city. They're not specific to this zoning district or this use. And so those types of trying to prevent nuisances from the neighbors are throughout the code. They're standalone sections of our land development regulations.
Okay, but as I believe you noted somewhere, because there isn't a concept plan, there is no guarantee that the maximum possible development with the most aggressive situations wouldn't happen.
That's right, and we do that with every application if they don't provide us a concept plan. When it comes to the preliminary concurrency analysis, making sure that there's enough utilities to serve that development, we do a hypothetical worst-case build-out to make sure that if that were to come, it's not typical, but if that were to be developed, we would have the utilities to provide it. And so that's what this staff report does, since there's no concept tied to it, is we evaluated it at the most intense possible.
So I'm not accusing anyone of a bait and switch, but technically, it would be possible to put some pretty heavy-duty industry, at least on the commercial high-intensity section.
That's possible.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any cards?
Yes, sir, one card. Bob Watwood.
Thank you. Again, my name is Bob Watwood. I'm owner of a house on Lane Avenue, which my father owned for many, many years. I signed a card, and I guess you had to be opposition or for or against, but I'm not really opposed to commercial development on the property, but I'm concerned with a couple of things. As Mr. Garrod pointed out, there's no binding concept plan. As you pointed out, no binding concept plan tied to the application to look at. So my biggest concern is the traffic on Lane Avenue that will be, and whether that'll be adequately addressed by the city as part of the development. At one of the community engagement meetings in September that I attended, that drawing was handed out that referred to the what I call mostly pickleball courts and volleyball courts for the site. And it showed the ingress and egress points on both South Street and Lane Avenue. And forgive me for being dubious, but I reasonably, I think that the property will be developed that way given its value. So it's likely to develop as more intense commercial type of development and likely to generate considerable traffic on Lane Avenue, assuming there will be at least one access on Lane Avenue. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with the neighborhood, and I apologize for doing this, but I just want to go over a couple of things that I think merit consideration and concern, primarily related to traffic. I'm sorry, I didn't give this to the secretary. I just did a little. It's a map from the property appraiser site that just shows the site in yellow and then the way that past Lane Avenue. So at the northeast corner of the old school property, Lane Avenue starts to make one of four quick, almost all 90-degree turns, then heads into a strictly single-family residential area, eventually ends at Park Avenue, but not before it connects with Smith Drives north and south, which ultimately funnel traffic past more strictly single-family residents on Rosella Lane, Tudor Lane, and Raven Lane, all of which terminate at Park Avenue as well at 4 additional points. So this development is going to send or draw a significant amount of traffic to and from Park Avenue right through strictly single-family residential area. I guess what I'd like to do right now is kind of put a bug in the city's ear, the city staff, the city commission, city council, to consider this traffic problem when approving any development of this property. It seems, or any development orders on this property, it seems to me that some restrictions or requirements are appropriate to limit the traffic on Lane and its tributaries, all back through those subdivisions. Maybe something like limiting access points to South Street only, or at a minimum require a traffic analysis and require improvements that'll preclude traffic leaving the site, turning onto south, turning south onto Lane Avenue and then through the subdivisions.
More time do you need?
I'm sorry. I'll try to wrap it up. The second thing I'd like to point out is
Do you
that
need a minute or 2 minutes?
I need 3 minutes. Am I that far into it? I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
The thing I'd like to point out that
Proceed.
I have a concern over whether the future land use change in part to high-intensity commercial is appropriate. The parcel is at the intersection of South Street and Lane Avenue. Understanding that South Street is an arterial street, Lane Avenue is a local street. And so now, last night I happened to be reading through your future land use element and its policies on this subject, and I found policy 1.9.1, which says, quote, sites for high-intensity commercial development shall be located with convenient and direct access at arterial intersections. Collector/arterial intersections are acceptable provided minimal access is necessary on the collector street. And I think that a logical reading of that, those two sentences together contemplate high-intensity commercial usage at the intersections of two arterial roads or the intersection of an arterial road and a commuter street, but even then only minimal access is necessary on the collector street. So I don't see how that really, seems to me it's a stretch to say that that promotes a connection. Like here, this property is on an arterial and local intersection, not arterial or arterial connection, or collector. And I guess, so I think that's a concern, and whether this is even appropriate for the high intensity part of the CC commercial community zoning, comp plan change. And finally, I'd like to encourage the developer to make available to the residents a list of his other developments. He indicated at last community engagement meeting that he needed the consent of his partners to provide such a list. I've asked for it thereafter, but have not received one. And he doesn't have to provide one, but it might make some of the residents more comfortable to know something about what types of developments he has done. So, any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Rockwood?
Yeah, Chairman.
Mr.
gonna say-
Cotton?
I was looking at this map. I think your map might be a little off because I think, because it's worse than what you've drawn here. A lane where it's basically like a 90-degree turn off of, so where you have the pink right by the highlighted part.
I'm sorry.
It's actually like it's a 90-degree turn instead. Yeah, it's awful right there actually, because I've seen people come around there. I don't know why there aren't more accidents
But
there.
there are some.
Yeah, and I've seen people come around and take it so wide, and they don't even see who's coming. So I don't even know how that road got made like that, but because it's super dangerous, I think. But are you saying that besides what the comp plan says, I'll see if we can clear that up. But are you saying there needs to be some extra traffic stuff to like stop people from going from lane south?
At least
or
severely discourage it somehow.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're going to have people, you know, if they turn right and start heading south, they just go into the subdivisions. All
Yeah, I
those
know.
streets just fan out into there and go to Park.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that. I'm not a traffic person, but I assume that there's something can be done. Now, obviously, it'd be better even if you had just had two, if you have to have two access points for emergency vehicles purposes and everything, to have them both on South Street. I don't know that you can do that, but at least if you have to have one on Lane, that something is done to preclude
Yeah.
or limit the amount of traffic.
I mean, anytime I've been on there, I haven't seen a ton of traffic, but when I did see traffic, they were zooming around.
Yeah,
But
they zoom quite a bit.
so have you had that same experience of not a lot of traffic right now, or certain times of the day, or?
Well, where this Dad's house is located, I get the zoom traffic. There's a stretch where there's not houses
Yeah.
on both sides of the road. It's just past this property, and they just fly after they make
Yeah,
the
they-
490 degrees turns. They fly.
Yeah.
But then they start again into
Yeah.
the rest of the subdivision.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to pass the gavel to member,
Okay.
the Vice Chairman Aton for a couple of minutes.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, you would prefer maybe if most of the traffic went off South Street then, and so would that be okay with you? I mean, would that make it more acceptable to you if
Yeah,
the traffic
I
was?
can't speak for the other residents.
I know, it's just you,
I
though.
think,
I know.
you know, it's going to be commercial, I think, eventually anyway, and that, I don't know how you, I think one of the residents one time just wanted to close off lane at the senior center, and I don't know how you
Yeah.
do that legally. But yeah, it's just some way to keep all that traffic from going back and forth. I don't know how much would come from Park Avenue to the north, but I'm sure a lot of people will use that. I don't say I can do anything but increase the traffic dramatically. So
Yeah.
some way to just limit it would be, I'd like to see. And again,
more
there's no, as you pointed out, the concept plan doesn't, they can't do that on the concept plan at this time. And this one, the drawing they presented is not binding on anybody, so we don't really know what kind of development's going to be there and how much traffic's going to generate, but whatever's there is going to generate enough to make it a lot more difficult for the residents. It's true there.
Hey, Eddie, can you answer a question about the arterial streets and what the code says about that, about commercial high intensity and the streets and the current streets there, right? Is South Street a collector or is it a collector or is it an arterial? It's an arterial road, right?
That's right.
Okay.
South Street is an arterial road.
And Lane is a local street or is it
Lane is a local road.
a local road? So does the comp plan say that we can't have commercial high intensity there unless there's?
The policy that was referenced is policy 1.9.1 of the future land use element. It says sites for high-intensity commercial development shall be located with convenient and direct access at arterial intersections. And so it doesn't say that the commercial high-intensity must be located at the intersection of an arterial or arterials. What it's saying is sites for high-intensity commercial development. Also, it's at the intersection of an arterial. And if you read the next sentence, it says collector arterial intersections are acceptable provided minimal access is necessary on the collector street. So as was discussed about Lane Avenue, if you felt that it was inappropriate to allow the access onto Lane Avenue, that could be a condition of approval is allow the future land use and zoning, but limit the access onto. Typically, we would refrain from doing so, at least without having a traffic study or traffic analysis supporting that type of condition. It could be the commission's intent to request additional information to support that and then make a decision in the future, so.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I've been like I said, I've been around that road a little bit, and it's really empty a lot, and there's a lot of space between South and where you make that 90-degree turn to go to the senior center. And, I think maybe some people might be going south from there, and then I see a lot of people just, if they're going out, they're just, from whatever's been developed there, might just be more convenient to go out there and then head north to go to South Street. But I don't know, but that's a good question. I think it is something they need to look at, but, all right, thank you.
I'm up. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Eddie, with regard to the recital of the comprehensive plan policy on the subjectivity perhaps of collector arterial and determining factors for access, the concept plan that would be committed, if it had been committed, wouldn't require the traffic study and the other aforementioned improvement plan related criteria. It would be more just the paper, what you might do. What zoning district would be best suited for addressing those concerns, illustrating and committing to limited accessibility to the site, criterion-wise, from the arterial road as opposed to a local street? And a local street which is at best probably substandard for any large volumes of traffic at an unlighted intersection, non-controlled intersection. Wouldn't that be best served through like a planned development zoning district where you could negotiate all the factors of concerns as well as commit to a more formidable site plan?
Sure, that's an option as well. A plan development, you're going to have a master plan to go with that, and it's a negotiation tool. So you'd have a concept plan that would be binding. You'd have conditions if they wanted to provide additional amenities. You have to prove that there's a benefit for using the plan development option. And there's also the minimum open space requirement of 35% of the site. In this case, that's not being requested tonight, but a plan development is another option.
And if I could follow up with two more questions on that. Using the 35% criterion, the illustration that isn't committed is a large area for water management and retention areas, as illustrated in the program earlier. That would appear to me to well exceed 35% open space, just as the illustration depicted.
I'd have to read that section of the plan development section of the code to see what qualifies as open space. I know that there's been concerns in the past with PDs. Council has expressed concerns and asked staff to draft ordinances to limit the use of open water features, stormwater, because it's not really usable space. It's just technically open space, but it doesn't meet the intent of a recreational component. We've got a draft of that ordinance in the works. So the intent moving forward is not to allow an entire stormwater pond to count towards open space.
Sure, but what I'm suggesting is that from the illustration that was provided but not committed to, there's ample areas, whether it was all water management, given the depiction of potential development, best suitable for marketability, there was a large area that could contend with that exaction 35% open space, regardless of whether. And then the last question is, the land uses that are requested would be suitable for a planned unit development zoning district.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
The requested land uses are compatible, or a planned development zoning district would be compatible with the land uses being sought on this application?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Member Faison.
So I grew up in this area. I was born and raised here.
I did as well.
And I used to practice football, Little League, over in that Whispering Hills parking lot.
I did as well.
Many years ago. For the city, since this cut-through area here seems to be a mountain of contention, would the city be willing to vacate that portion of the road and cutting a lane off from going east to west? And that would alleviate all these questions.
I'm sorry, I think I missed that. On South Street?
No, on
Lane.
On Lane Avenue.
On Lane Avenue.
All right, so how it zigzags and goes through the neighborhood. So it comes north to south, right? Then it goes east to west, then it goes back down north to south again. So that small portion, that very, very small portion of east to west, would the city be willing to yield that back to the owner of the property, thereby getting rid of that cut-through traffic?
That's an interesting idea. It's not something I can answer tonight. That's something that we'd have to explore with Public Works and legal.
Okay. Because as I'm looking at it here on the map, right, I think that that would probably be one of the easiest here, quote unquote, ways to solve the residents' issues. And that's the city being part of the solution.
Member Rogers.
This is maybe to Mr. Rockwood because it's his neighborhood, and possibly to Member Faison because it was his neighborhood, and Eddie also to you because this is your job. I'm looking at the public, semi-public. I remember Lane Avenue not well, but it's really low across from this property, is it not? It's kind of like a sort of a swamp with a boardwalk through it, sort of a.
It's all undeveloped to the east. That's what you're.
It's all what?
Undeveloped to the east, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
across the road.
But I mean, isn't it so low and wet that it probably can't be developed or I mean, just, I guess what I'm saying is, it seems to me that a benefit of this piece of property and having entrances on this road, I can't imagine that on the other side of the street, there's ever gonna be a huge kind of traffic flow coming in because
No,
I just think
I didn't mean to suggest that there would be. I'm concerned about the traffic going back.
Yeah,
to
you
the
know,
south.
I understand that. I guess I was
Yeah.
just thinking, but I was thinking about that, and the closing of the road possibly, or terminating it at some point. Maybe that is a good answer.
Any other questions? I have one for you. It doesn't relate to this, but was your father or grandfather Herman Watwood?
Yes to both of those.
Your grandfather served on the P and Z many, many years, back in the 50s and 60s. He was at one time chairman of this commission, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was one time postmaster. Yeah, postmaster too. Any other questions? Member Faison, your light is on again.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Vice Chairman Aton.
So Eddie, you kind of mentioned this, so we could approve this with a condition that either whatever, when it comes time to apply for a building permit or site plan, that the exit at least be one entrance or exit off of South Street, or that there'd be a traffic study, or what's the best way to accomplish? It seems like that certainly, we don't want the only entrance to be off of Lane, and ideally maybe none of the entrances off of Lane. What's the best way to accomplish that?
Yes, sir, that is an option if you're satisfied with the presentation about the past proposal for residential and the current recommendation or proposal from the applicant for the commercial land uses. You could approve the request with the condition that if a traffic study warrants it, that a no right turn lane, a no right turn traffic control device be provided along Lane Avenue to prevent traffic heading south into the neighborhood.
I like that, yeah.
No, we've still got a public hearing. Okay, do you have anything further to add?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other cards, Lori?
No, sir.
That's the only card. So it comes back to the commission. Do you have some more questions? Oh, the lights are on. Member Garad.
I don't have any questions. I'd like to make a motion regarding the future land use amendment request.
Go ahead.
I would
Unless
move-
Chair.
the applicant want to talk
Rebuttal?
again? Yeah.
Hi, sorry, real quick. What I wanted to say is we are fully supportive of not more than one entrance onto Lane Avenue and also restricting that entrance so people can only take a left-hand turn. We have no desire for people leaving this project to take a southbound right-hand turn onto Lane. One of the things we discussed at the community meeting as well is we're fully in support of whether the neighborhood wants to, and I don't think they have to vacate or abandon the right-of-way. The city could just close access to that road. We would have no objections to that and are fully supportive of restricting access to one lane as far, or excuse me, one entrance as far north on Lane as possible. Left-hand northbound turn only.
Any questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, I'll close the public hearing. Member Faison.
Again, I don't know how the left-hand turn only works, but I would rather, I think it's a better and easier solution for the city to go ahead and donate that piece of property to this project. I think that makes it easier, cleaner, and, it solves everybody's solution, to include the residents concerned about traffic going through their neighborhoods.
Member Garad.
As I mentioned, I'd be willing to make a motion if you're ready for a motion.
Go ahead.
In regard to the commonality of the application, both the future land use amendment and the rezoning and the process by which we're making recommendations in one flow, I want to be careful when I make this recommendation regarding the future land use amendment. The carefulness is to recognize that the applicant's intention to market the property, the historic lack of development as a school site, the obviousness of the school district that a school site's not going to be reborn on the site for some other purposes, it's probably due time that the land use is amended to facilitate marketability. And commercial development appears from multiple meetings with the neighbors and even tonight's presentation by Mr. Watwood in support, tacitly perhaps, of the land use, but certainly the concerns that appear regarding the site. The future land use, I would recommend approval as requested by the applicant. However, since we have to do the stream of consciousness regarding the rezoning application, therein I have the problem. I think, as I mentioned, that a planned development would be consistent with the amended application to land use. I think that the concerns of the neighborhood and the presentation provided, albeit as a suggested plan, not a committed plan, would be enhanced through the development of a planned development zoning district in which a committed plan would be provided, and moreover, conditional development authority given to a planned development's negotiations, such as limiting access, controlling the intersection at South Street, and other concerns that have been voiced, would be well suited through a planned development zoning district. And that wouldn't, by any measure, reduce the marketability. It simply require a teamwork by the landowner. You heard the applicant mention joint venture potential, even marketability, that the land use alone has good standing with a market-driven economy out there. Somebody's looking for commercial land use. So I cannot recommend approval of the requested zoning change, but I would recommend approval of the future land use amendment.
Would you have to restate your motion more simply?
I recommend approval as requested of the future land use amendment, which is SSA 2024, and denial of the requested rezoning application.
Could you bifurcate? Just leave it at the future land use motion?
I'd be pleased to do that. I thought we had to do both because there's, okay, I'll leave it at the future land use. I'd recommend approval of it.
Second. Yeah.
Okay. It sounded to me like Vice Chair Aton. Okay. I heard it from my left ear. Okay. Member Faison?
Nope.
Okay. Any other discussion? The motion is, would you restate the motion?
I recommend approval of the requested SSA 7-2024 for approval.
Okay, roll call, please, Lori.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Member Findler?
Yes.
Member Garad?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Aton?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes. Is that all the motions? Is there another motion?
Are you looking for a motion on the rezoning request now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll make a motion. Thank you. I'd make a motion for denial of the request of rezoning application. I'm trying to scroll to the code number. Can you help me with that, staff? It's the same number, the rezoning 2024. Based on the fact that this appears to be better served for development with a planned development zoning district at least, certainly more committed than a rezoning request with no committed site plan. And given the ambiguity of that, a denial of the rezoning request.
Is there a second on the motion to deny?
I'll second.
Seconded by Member Faison. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Lori?
Member Garad,
Yes?
Secretary Grant,
No.
Member Childs,
No.
Member Faison,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Aton,
No.
Member Findler,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
No. Motion does not pass. Members Childs?
I make a motion to recommend approval to City Council for the rezoning of SSA 7-2024.
Is there a second?
I have friendly amendment,
Go ahead.
with the conditions, stated as it
Yes,
relates
sorry,
to
the parking, or the right turn lane.
right turn lane and, I think the single.
At least.
On the lane with the right turn lane and then the other one off of South Street.
Accepted.
Okay. Motion was made by Member
Second.
Childs and seconded by Vice Chairman Aton with some changes. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairman Aton,
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Findler,
No.
Member Garad,
No?
Member Childs,
Yes.
Member Faison,
No.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. So the motion does pass by a vote of 4-3. And this will be heard at the next city council meeting or?
Can I ask the no votes to state the basis for the denial for the record?
Yes.
I'll go first. I was in the same opinion of Member Garat that a planned or something showing the plan would be what I'd be looking for the rezoning. So that's why I was voting no.
Same kind.
Same.
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Next item is 8D3, election of officers. I would recommend that there's an election for officers be held at the next meeting, because at city council's meeting next week, we don't know who they'll reappoint or not reappoint. So is there any discussion on that? Anyone care to make a motion that be put on the next P&Z agenda?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that makes sense to move it to the next meeting.
You're making a motion?
I'll make a motion to move this item, election of officers, to our next meeting in February.
Second that, please.
Second by Secretary Grant. Any discussion? Signify by saying aye if you agree. Opposed, no. Motion passes. I might make a comment at this point. If you wondered why some of us were a little late coming to the meeting, is I've thought about this a lot. And my service on the Planning and Zoning Commission this time was 5 years. And the time before was 5 years in the 80s. And I considered it and I prayed about it and everything. And I've chosen to tell the city clerk to remove my name for reappointment. And I think I need to travel a little bit. I've got other things I want to do. But I've got to tell you that of all the P&Zs that I've been a part of, and P and Zs that I've watched, I think this is the best P and Z we've ever had. And whoever's going to be chairman, a couple of things I want to tell you. You've got to really respect the staff. We've got a tremendous staff. Lori and Eddie and Chelsea and all the staff that I know of. I don't know you yet.
This is Tabitha.
But she's okay. I'm going to take a break. You'll see me outside in the seats. And I just need to take a break.
Me too.
So,
What? Did you say, did I hear a Me Too down there?
Well, my time is up, yeah.
you've got another year.
I did not hear a Me Too movement going on. This will not be another Me Too movement. Movement is the key word.
So, you've got what I intend to do. This will be my last meeting. And I appreciate everybody for voting me as chairman. I've been chairman 2.5 years. I took the chairmanship when Jane Spidell passed away. And no one would have thought 13 years ago when they said I lived the rest of my life in the nursing home, I would have not thought I could be chairman of planning and zoning. So.
You did a great job.
I don't need to clap. It's hard for. No more balloons.
Wait a minute. So, again, your last meeting, the next meeting should be your last meeting.
No, this one is. This one is. The next meeting, Vice Chairman Aton.
I know, but he should be
acts as chairman.
He should pass the gavel next meeting. There should be a passing of the gavel next meeting, you know.
I'm not even gonna sit outside in the next meeting. I'm watching on TV. While eating pretzels and drinking Diet Coke.
This is like quitting on Friday. This is like I quit on Friday.
Next item, economics of development in Florida. Is this what Lord Lee Thompson gave us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This was something that was requested on a lighter agenda. It is 8:15, so if you want me to bring it back at a future meeting, we certainly can do that, or we can
You
power
found
through.
with me. Y'all want to discuss it tonight?
It's too cold.
Is there a motion to hold it? Well,
Well, question, how long will it take you?
To be honest, I need more guidance from the commission on what you want from this item. So if you remember, Laura Lee Thompson presented this report from Urban 3 that highlights how communities have calculated the land value, taxable value of property, and how it demonstrates a suburban style of development is the least efficient style of development. So really, I was just going to go over what the city had done with that report in 2018. We had done our own analysis showing that there's higher peaks when you're in downtowns, in our downtown, compared to like Walmart. Walmart may bring in a lot of money, but it takes up a lot of land area versus the smaller downtown stores. They generate a lot of revenue for the land area that they take up. And so I don't know what really you'd like us to present to you other than this information. It could be as short as 10 minutes. Or if you want to spend time actually figuring out if there's any recommendations from that you'd like to send to council, that may take 30, 40 minutes.
No, if I'm not mistaken, I believe one of her angles was talking about West Titusville and the benefits of making that we're talking about. So, if I'm mistaken, can y'all tell me if she was really focused on West Titusville? Is that correct? For the most part?
I didn't catch that, but if maybe that's no.
Oh, well, I missed it then. I slept.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add to all the members here, and I mentioned it, you'll recall that the presentation you see here is available if you want to log on to the Thousand Friends of Florida and just search for the name of this. The video presentation's an hour and a half. It's a certified program, so it's being viewed or was viewed by urban planners all over the country. The presenters and the demonstration they use in their graphics is a picture worth 1,000 words as opposed to the static reading. That might help you understand it, not that you can't understand it from the static reading that Ms. Thompson presented, but it really engages you when you watch it. And a footnote to that is today, the same organization, Thousand Friends of Florida, had a presentation on the Florida Wildlife Corridor 2.0. That particular presentation is equally informative and outstanding information, and it relates directly with, I can assure you, having watched it, directly relates to the very conversations this commission has seen take place where the concerns about connectivity to wildlife areas is oftentimes overlooked in the attempt to preserve wetlands. I welcome all the members to look at both of those. Take a time. It's a very interesting, and I would say entertaining for me as a planner. It was entertaining. For other people, it'll be exciting. Thank you.
If it helps the commission, I could send the links out to those two webinars, and then I guess maybe consider that item addressed. And then if you want to bring back certain topics that you've learned, if there's something specific that you'd like to implement here in Titusville, you could present it at a future meeting. But other than that, it was really just to discuss that report. Yeah, I can send the city's analysis with the link to the webinars.
Member Rogers.
All I was going to say was, well, first I'll say that I think Thousand Friends of Florida is well worth getting to know. Full disclosure, the president's my brother-in-law, so I probably should say that as well. But he's been telling me that this sort of information is of increasing interest to, city councils and planners and that sort of thing. And there is a growing bulk of evidence, and maybe it's already grown, that sprawl doesn't pay for itself. That really what sprawl is the citizens of an area subsidizing the developers to sprawl out into the hinterlands. And it's a loser long-term financially. And I just think there's some really key things to understand here.
Member Charles.
I was going to say, I guess the only thing, when I was looking to get out of something, a discussion is how we apply, what we see in this to here, and are we not already kind of going in that direction? Because I know a lot of what we try to focus on is getting to, downtown, to build up. And that's kind of what this is saying. And then also any areas that we do have the option for, apartments, like across from Titusville High School, whatever that, I can never remember the name of that place, Royal or something. River Palms. But, bigger things like that. I guess that's kind of what this is going towards. But I guess, if we can find, key takeaways from this report that match up with our comp plan, I think is probably all really I'm looking for. Just make sure we're lining up, with what the key takeaways are from this, I guess.
Vice Chairman Leton.
So, I kind of mentioned it last time, but is there, I guess my question was, how much of this type of thing as it relates to the economics of a project does staff have any review or anything? I know it doesn't make it into the staff reports that we get. Seems like maybe it should, or especially if there are projects that effectively, from the sprawl standpoint, go backwards, and they're going from an infrastructure and all the things, there's actually a negative economic impact on the city. If a particular project goes forward, how does that get communicated? Does it get reviewed? Are you guys not allowed to review that? It seems like this makes a lot of great points, but how does it get how can we act on it, or how can we understand on a quantitative basis as a project's presented to us?
I think that's something that we'll have to think about how to present that to the commission. It's hard because the data, like we were going to hand out tonight, is showing you the static, what is there currently and what is its value versus its size. Versus when you're receiving a proposal, you're dealing with hypothetical land values, which are very hard to guess. And so it's not a concrete science the way that this is just presenting you facts in pretty colors versus trying to think about the impacts of a land use change or a rezoning. So it's harder for us to quantify those without, or at least I haven't found any good tools for quantifying those numbers. They might exist now that this report's been out for quite some time. So we can take a look at it and give you some suggestions on how to incorporate that.
Member Grodd.
Actually, in line with Mr. Anton's comment, tonight, part of the discussion was referring to a site as being suburban. Just taking a look at a county versus a city, a county and a city differ. The urban services by a municipality are what it's all about. Annexation and growth of a city creates wide open spaces, so pretty soon an urban environment starts to look suburban. And I've mentioned several times, but that's one of the features I think Titusville has to look serious at, is if it just keeps grabbing annexation of property for the intention of spreading the city out, it's going to do so at the risk of increasing costs for services. It's what that presentation is all about, is densifying your urban core because it's return on investment. That's a simple way to put it. And that's one of the plaguing problems. And I believe also is represented, if you take the opportunity to link into the wildlife corridor, that's the problem the counties face. They approve suburban sprawl because they approve development of Deseret ranches all the way to the St. Johns River as the inside limits of the city of Orlando. I don't think many people would consider the east boundary of the St. Johns River to be the city of Orlando, but that quite frankly is potential. The wildlife corridor shows you an illustration of that's not potential. That is happening every day with unincorporated counties laying development down and then it annexes into a city. But the nature of development is cost effectiveness, and that's what it's all about. That's what that presentation's about. And yeah, it's very difficult to present that for a staff report in a small budgeted area because it's very difficult numbers to track, to migrate the data, to illustrate it. But if you've done that already, I applaud you for having that capacity. And that is what the whole point was, is that all of our reviews, the city council also should review matters for that return on investment versus cost and effectiveness on development approvals. That's my 2 bits of 101 planning. Thank you.
Member Rogers.
Eddie, these things that you have there, the data, you said it had been calculated in 2018 for Titusville?
Sorry, nothing was calculated. It was just that we used our GIS team to visually display the land value versus the size of the property.
Okay.
So it's a visual aid to help demonstrate that dense urban core, even downtown Titusville, maybe not the most dense urban core, but it does have a great land value per acre because of the development pattern that's there. We've got infrastructure that serves a lot of end users versus if you have one big box store at the end of the line,
right,
that doesn't serve as many tenants along the way, serve as many uses.
I know you don't really have much to do during the day, so maybe this might be something that you could work on. I wonder if you might, I don't know, choose one development that went in, I don't know, 1980 or something like that, or just pick a big development that went in a certain year and then look at sales prices on the property. I mean, or ask somebody to do it. I don't know. Ask these people to do it. I don't know. But and I guess if you kind of could just adjust for inflation, there are factors you can add for that. I think that what it seemed to me that the big thing was that it's free infrastructure to the city when the developers do a development. They pay for all the roads and they pay for the pipes and they pay for all that good stuff. But then they say here to the city, and the city says, thank you. And then, 30 years later, the city has to replace it all. And then that's where the cost really comes in. I mean, it's not the only place, but anyway, I just wonder if you mightn't select I don't know, a larger development in the area from 10 or 20 years ago, or 30 or something like that.
Okay, so did the commission want to set a time certain to discuss this report, or do you want to leave it up to the staff when it looks like a light agenda to add it to that agenda? Member Faison.
I think Eddie's suggestion of sending out the email with the links for us to review first, to give us an opportunity to kind of review that information, and then come back with any questions, and then you can set that on the agenda for a future date.
Is everybody agree with that? Okay. Next item, petitions and requests from the public. I knew you were going to say something.
I don't usually.
Good evening, Vicki Conklin, Royal Oak Drive. I just wanted to make you all aware that the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting will be next Wednesday on January 29th at 6 p.m. here. And it's really important because you all are the planning agency for our city. And so I think it's really important because this is an appeal actually filed under my name. But it's a challenge because it's a decision. The zoning ordinance that was in place and the comprehensive plan that's in place regarding accessing a local road for a multifamily development, that's the question, and they're in conflict. And so the only choices that we had for 2727 demerit was to file an appeal with the Board of Adjustments and Appeals because it's placed the city staff in a really challenging, tough situation that they had to make a decision, even though the zoning was multifamily, it needed access and so therefore will violate the comp plan. So that's just a little gist, but if you could, you won't be able to tune in. For some reason, it's quasi-judicial, but the city won't tape it. It'll only be audio. So I will provide video, and I will be doing a presentation. So it's important enough for the future, actually, for the future growth of our city, because increasingly we are faced, I believe, more and more with these challenges with multifamily wanting to access on a local road. And staff has faced this, I know, a number of times, and I don't blame them, but the zoning was put in place decades ago by a previous city council. And then the comprehensive plan, of course, is in place. And so the question is, which weighs more? And most attorneys are telling me that the comprehensive plan weighs more. So there's a little bit about the story. Tune in. You won't be able to tune in. You'll have to be here. But I think that increasingly, the role that you all play is so important in making the decisions. And I guess that was the gist of what I wanted to say. The decisions that you make really do matter. And it matters if everything is in sync, because everything's not in sync around here. We got some work to do. Thanks.
Any other citizens want to speak before the commission? Any other? Okay. Report, city staff.
No report, sir. Thank you for your service as our chairman. We appreciate you.
Thank you. City attorney.
I just want to echo that and say thank you, Chairman Richardson, for your time here on the P&Z, and we will miss you. And it's going to be a whole different board next week.
Thank you. I want to make a couple of remarks, whoever sits in this seat. I told Chelsea, and I think I told Eddie, I don't know if it was Eddie or not, but I told him that I would be totally different as the chairman than I was as a regular member. Because the chairman has to run the meeting and pay respect to everybody, whether you agree with them or not. You have to pay respect to every member of the board, all the staff, all the citizens out there that may come to testify. And it's a difficult job. And you cannot talk as much as you want. You'll just wait until the vote is cast. You might make a remark, but that's the function of the chairman. And I've been chairman of this board twice, and vice mayor, and chaired a bunch of statewide organizations. but that's the responsibility of the chair. And you got to think about it, any of you that want to be chairman. You got to respect the staff, respect the people out there, and respect all the members of the commission, whether you like them and disagree with them or not. You respect everybody. Okay, members.
Joe,
Thank you.
it has been an amazing ride knowing you, speaking with you, and serving with you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the board, this is my last time to say it. This meeting is adjourned.